Welcome to Tiny Show and Tell Us, the bonus series where you write in with your favorite science news or factoid, we read your email aloud, and then dive deeper. I'm Sam Jones, and I'm here with my co-host, Deboki Chakravarti.
Hi, Sam. So last time when we did this, we talked about fungal toxins and bat periods.
Right.
And yeah, it's been a little while since we recorded, but whenever I do these little recaps, I'm like, oh, right, we talked about that.
We talk about some very interesting stuff, and it's quite the variety.
Right. Yeah. The combination always gets me.
Yeah.
And of course, a reminder for all of you listeners that if you have a story you'd like us to cover for a Tiny Show and Tell Us, all you have to do is write us an email, and that email is tinymatters@acs.org. You can also fill out the form that's linked in the episode description. So Sam, this week, I'm going to go first. I have a message from listener Ben, who wrote, I think sustainability efforts and research are fascinating. Very true, Ben. One very specific example is that the dandelion, something that is typically thought of as a weed and is fun to blow the seeds off of, is also being researched as a sustainable source of natural latex rubber to go into tires.
Whoa.
Yeah. Ben has a little bit of a conflict of interest declaration. I will admit that I work for Continental as a chemist, so that is how I know about this, but I have nothing to do with this research and just thought this was really cool. I only read about it in an internal press release, so I tried to find a fully open article about it. But back to the basis of this, I just think that it is amazing that there are people out there who can find uses for anything, even something that mostly brings me annoyance as I am mowing the lawn. So yeah, this was really neat. So Ben's company, I guess it's not Ben's company, the company that Ben works at, Continental, is working on this project. So some context, tires are mostly made with synthetic rubber, which I didn't know, but natural rubber has these complex long polymers in it that have really good kind of material properties. So a lot of tires will have around 10 to 30% of rubber that's taken from trees, particularly rubber trees. But these trees only grow in tropical areas. So that's tough for quite a few reasons. You're really limited in where you can grow them. With climate change happening, having that kind of restriction, just like as a practical concern, is not great. You're also subject to political forces. If your rubber trees are in a place where maybe things aren't particularly stable, it's not a great source of the material that you need.
Right. Also, I never made the connection between rubber trees actually
making
being
rubber
a source of rubber. I wonder if are they just named that because of their utility?
I assume they're called that. So they produce this sap-like thing that's basically latex, and then we turn that into rubber. Continental was looking for a material that was similar enough to the natural rubber that you get from those trees so that they could easily throw it into their normal tire production process. It'd be one thing if you found a substitute, but it's something that you then have to completely reconfigure your protocols and procedures around. That's actually maybe not ideal. So it might be a little bit more efficient to find something that's really similar. And the thing that they found that ended up working was the Russian dandelion, which has rubber in its roots.
Wow.
And Russian dandelions are exciting as an alternative because they're easy to grow in huge amounts. They can grow in a bunch of different areas. You only need to wait a year after planting them to harvest, whereas with rubber trees, you have to wait more 7 years to be able to harvest them for their rubber.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's why the Russian dandelion was this really exciting thing. And according to their press release, they started realizing the potential of the dandelion around 2011, and that kicked off a pretty big project where the scientists had to figure out all sorts of things to make the process work well, like figuring out, the dandelion's metabolism by looking at its genome, figuring out how do you harvest these dandelions without hurting them. That's a pretty big factor. You don't want to have to, delicately pick every single one.
Yeah.
So there was a lot to figure out. They do have a bike tire that's made from this rubber. From what I've seen, I think this product is currently available. I'm not sure if there are other tires. I was looking on their website and that was the main one that I saw. But if you would like a dandelion rubber tire, you can check out the Terazagum, Taraxagum bike tire. Terazagum is the name of the project that they've been carrying out to figure out this dandelion stuff. But yeah, I thought this was a really, really cool story. I think one of the things that it made me think about is just how much stuff nature is good at. And, we are always trying to figure out how to imitate things that nature evolved. And I just think it's really cool to be natural rubber has these advantages that we may not be able to figure out how to engineer ourselves. As an engineer and someone who like believes in like, I don't know, humans being able to make things, it's also cool to realize like the upper bound is so high because nature's been doing this for so long.
I feel like we've come back to that in a variety of episodes, like thinking about nature-inspired materials that scientists are trying to create. And this is one I didn't know anything about. I need to go check out that bike tire.
Yeah. Yeah, go check out some dandelions, get some rubber, and make yourself a tire. Did you ever pick dandelions when you were little?
Of course.
Like there's kind of like that glue, I feel like,
yeah,
around the ring. I assume that's not what it is because I think it was more from the roots, but that's like what it made me think of.
Yeah, like kind of like a slimy-ish.
Yeah.
Haven't picked a dandelion in a long time. Maybe I should.
Yeah. Can't do it now. We're looking out at blankets of snow.
Looking out at frozen ground. Yeah. So not great for dandelion growth. Okay, so my tiny show and tell us today is from listener Lorelei, who wrote in saying, I recently came across this paper on a fentanyl vaccine. I didn't know you could have vaccines against drugs. What does that even mean? How do these work? Yeah, it's really cool. This is a very cool concept. Mm-hmm. So let's start with fentanyl. Tiny Matters has an episode from November 2023 titled The Opioid Crisis, From Pill Mills to the Rise of Fentanyl and Current Glimmers of Hope. So if you want to really do a deep dive on opioids and learn about harm reduction and a lot of really interesting research surrounding opioids, definitely go check out that episode. So fentanyl, I'm getting off track, but fentanyl, synthetic opioid, meaning we make it. And like other opioids, it binds to opioid receptors in the brain and spinal cord. And when it does, it can create kind of a high, but also relieve pain. So the reason for opioids originally, like at least to be used in medicine, is for pain relief. But also opioid receptors are found in parts of the brain that control breathing. And I think when we hear about fentanyl, oftentimes we hear about fentanyl overdoses. And so what's happened there is someone stops breathing. So yeah, fentanyl is incredibly dangerous. One treatment for overdosing is naloxone, which binds to opioid receptors, keeping the fentanyl from binding. And we definitely talked about naloxone in that previous episode. Okay, so let's talk about this fentanyl vaccine, specifically one that is in phase 1 trials in the Netherlands, or it's about to go into phase 1 trials in the Netherlands. Research into this vaccine previously was done in rats. Now it's going into humans for phase 1 trials. We know phase 1 trials are just safety trials. They're not starting to look at efficacy yet. Hopefully it is effective and safe, but it's really early days in terms of the testing in humans. So essentially, the fentanyl vaccine works like any vaccine does, but with some important and interesting little, updates or like configurations.
Right.
I'll explain.
Yeah.
So all vaccines target the immune system. The idea is for your immune system to get a little sort of taste of whatever it is that is in the vaccine, things like the SARS-CoV-2 virus, right? You have like the spike protein that's in the vaccine. Your immune system learns what it looks like. And so then when it's presented with the real thing, it can fight it off. Mm-hmm. So the idea is for your immune system to detect and bind to fentanyl like it would if it were detecting and binding to SARS-CoV-2 or the virus that causes measles or the virus that causes polio. In that binding for fentanyl, it would keep fentanyl from reaching your brain. So the tricky thing is that fentanyl is this tiny molecule. Yeah. It's not like a chunk of a virus, right? Like it's not the spike protein. Like this is a small molecule.
Right.
And so scientists had to be a little more clever with this one. And so what they did was they attached a little piece of fentanyl to things that already trigger immune response. So one of those is something called CRM197. And this is a deactivated diphtheria toxin. The idea is that you have the diphtheria toxin and then it has a little piece of fentanyl that's attached to it. And so it's injected, your body mounts a response to the diphtheria toxin, but also that little piece of fentanyl that is on it. And so then the idea is that later on, if the person who is vaccinated took fentanyl, your immune cells would actually bind to the fentanyl, blocking it from going to your brain.
That's wild.
It is. They also have attached the little piece of fentanyl to E. coli toxins. Again, they're not giving someone E. coli poisoning.
Right.
Like these are, we're talking about stuff that is deactivated, but your immune system can still detect, which is just it's like so simple, but so smart.
Yeah. I wouldn't have expected that it would still help the immune system, like remember that this is what fentanyl looks like, right?
Right.
That's fascinating.
It's really cool, really ingenious design. I had mentioned before that before moving into humans, this had been tested in rats. These studies showed that the vaccine kept fentanyl from entering the brain and causing overdose. And so what they did is they gave the rats a dose and then they gave them a booster, like is typical for a lot of vaccines where you get a booster, 3 and 6 weeks after the first dose. So it looks like the initial human trials, they're going to have 40 people. They're going to look and see, after getting the vaccine, if they're actually making antibodies against. If they are, amazing. That points to efficacy. But really, again, the focus is safety for a phase 1 trial. So they want to make sure, of course, there are no safety issues before they test it out in larger populations, which would be in a phase 2 trial. Some potential issues, a lot of times we hear about fentanyl in the context of it being a street drug,
right.
Or there being fentanyl contamination in other drugs that are, being acquired illegally. Fentanyl is still used in the medical system for pain relief.
Right.
And so, the concern is, okay, if someone is vaccinated against fentanyl, but they maybe need fentanyl for pain relief, the fentanyl won't work.
Right.
But fentanyl is one of many opioids. You have things like morphine that is also an opioid, which is also addictive. Yeah. But you have a bunch of other opioids. And also there are opioid alternatives for pain relief. I mean, depending on the level of pain and the condition. But so not being able to take fentanyl, I guess you could say that's like somewhat of a concern depending on someone's pain levels, but also there are other options. And if someone needs to be vaccinated against fentanyl, I think probably the risk outweighs the cost.
Right.
What am I saying?
Yeah.
The risk outweighs.
Yeah.
So like the trade-off would be worth it.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's probably more about like thinking about whether or not it would make sense to have fentanyl vaccines be a widespread thing. Like that probably wouldn't be the case because it makes sense for us as a population to have fentanyl available like in hospitals as a painkiller.
Right.
I remember I had it within the past 5 years as a painkiller for my first surgery that I was having. And I remember I had never heard of fentanyl being used in a hospital context. I was like, huh? But that's how I learned. The point of that was just that it makes sense to have it available. So it's probably why, it just wouldn't be a widespread vaccine the way other things are, but like you're saying, there are probably people for whom it would make sense to have the fentanyl vaccine available to them. And for those people, probably would make sense to also not have to be as concerned about fentanyl being not an option in the hospital.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you to Ben and Lorelei for submitting to Tiny Show and Tell Us, a bonus series from Tiny Matters created by the American Chemical Society and produced by Multitude.
You can send us an email to be featured in a future Tiny Show and Tell Us episode at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form that's linked in the episode description. We'll see you next time.